It's been a long road, getting from there to here. It's been a long time, but our time is finally near because it's the 20th anniversary of Star Trek Enterprise, and your Geek History lesson with a very special guest is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Photonic Torpedoes Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or Star Trek franchise from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour, except this week because we're doing a celebration interview.
Yes, everybody. It is the 20th anniversary of a show that I affectionately call Enterprise. It's been retitled Star Trek Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise's first episode, Broken Bow, premiered on September 26th in 2001. And I'm just going to say it out there. It is a show that I know a lot of people dunk on. I love it. I like it. Star Trek Enterprise has always been a series. I love the right stuff attitude. I love that. And it's been one of my favorite shows in the franchise. And part of that might be because of Scott Bakula, but also part of that might be due to our very special guest that we've brought onto this episode to talk to us about his time on Star Trek Enterprise. Ashley, who's our special guest that we're going to get to in a little bit?
Our special guest this episode is the luminary Dominic Keating, who plays Malcolm Reed.
Lieutenant Malcolm Reed.
Lieutenant.
No, this is not the British. There wasn't British Starfleet.
Yeah. Dominic is British.
Lieutenant Commander. No,
yes, that's how the word's pronounced.
But no, Dominic is a luminary actor. He's a lovely gentleman, and
he's very funny.
And he's a very funny man. And we have beamed him into this show to ask him about his time playing Malcolm Reed, Lieutenant Malcolm Reed, on the show Star Trek Enterprise. So let's get into a very brief 10-cent origin here on Star Trek Enterprise. Ashley, what is the 10-cent origin?
The 10-cent origin is the first part of the podcast where Professor Jason is going to teach you all the basic things you need to know about Enterprise in case you go to a very cool Star Trek themed cocktail party and someone doesn't know.
Star Trek Enterprise, also known as Enterprise, is a science fiction television series that aired from 2001 to 2004. It was created by Rick Berman and Brannon Braga. Of course, it starred Scott Bakula, John Billingsley, Jolene Blalock, Dominic Keating, Anthony Montgomery, Linda Park, and Connor Trenier, who are some names that you will hear Dominic mention later in the show. And its opening theme song was Faith of the Heart, performed by Russell Watson. That, of course, is what I was talking about. And it's many composers, many directors. It had two showrunners, Brannon Braga from 2001 and 2005, and Manny Coto from 2004 to 2005. Let's get to the Meet Cute, Ashley.
Yeah, the second part of the podcast where we stole a term from romantic comedy writing and we tell you where we first met something and how cute it was.
Ashley, where did you first watch Enterprise?
So Enterprise was already on the air when I started watching Star Trek for the first time. Mm-hmm. But it was the only one that
it was like currently airing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It was the only one that was airing week to week, that was still being made, that was fully not already in reruns. And I didn't watch it for that reason, because it would go off the air because the seasons would end. And then I didn't watch it until I met you. And you said, how dare you, we should watch Enterprise. Mm-hmm. And we did. And I have to say, it is one of my more favorite Star Trek franchises. Where did you first meet and cute Star Trek Enterprise?
So my first connection to Star Trek, I call it Enterprise, is I saw commercials for it during the final season of Voyager. There was a commercial out there that would say, like, before Janeway, before Cisco, before Kirk, there was Archer, or there was Enterprise, and it's like coming soon. It was like nothing but titles, and because
they probably had no footage to use.
Oh, they probably hadn't shot the damn thing at that point. Yes. So I remember being excited about it. I remember being very worried about it because they did announce it was prequels, and of course we were right in the middle of the Star Wars prequels, so everybody was very anti-prequel. But I watched Broken Bow live when it was still syndicated, and it actually knocked my socks off. I was not expecting that show. Now, it has some very 2000-isms into it, because that, it was made 20 years ago, of course. But I kind of liked it for being like a fresh breath of air. And I kind of also like that it sort of had this tone that the other Star Trek shows didn't have, which I also think was very needed at the time. And so I actually really dug it. Now, of course, like with every show, there are some episodes I don't like. There are some episodes I love. Actually, fun fact, Dominic, our guest today, is in, I think, a lot of the good ones. Usually when it was a Malcolm Reed episode, it was one of those you're like, oh, this is going to be good.
He's definitely in. Someday we'll do our top 5 Enterprise episodes. You can request that at GHL Podcast. Definitely Shuttle Pod 1 would be in that for me.
But I will say that I have an even deeper connection to Star Trek Enterprise, and this might be a little bit reason of my love, and I don't think I've ever told this story on the podcast or to you. But when I was overseas, when I was deployed to Iraq, it was during the final season of Enterprise. And I remember being very bummed that I was, because we all knew it was the final season. I was not going to be able to see it. And Enterprise would air on, I believe we would get this channel, or we could get this channel if we had this like really crappy bunny ears. I think it was the Armed Forces Network.
Sure.
And it would just randomly air stuff. And I remember, I think Enterprise aired at like 2 a.m. our time.
Yeah,
over there.
Of course.
And if I could, or if I wasn't on a mission, I would watch it. And I got to tell you that being able to see new Star Trek while I was deployed was like one of the things that I looked for. And I have fun fact, that's how I watched the final season of Enterprise, except for the final episode, which they never aired on AFN.
Well, to be honest, I don't think you.
I know. We'll not get into that. We won't get into that. But that I did not get to see that episode until several years. I didn't get to see that episode until the DVDs.
So you thought it ended with the good final episode?
No. I knew I could, because the internet was around at that time.
Oh, sure.
I knew like Riker was in it. I knew that there was a Riker episode, and I just, I was like, well, what is this Riker episode?
Yeah.
But no, you are correct. The true finale.
The penultimate episode, in my opinion, is
Demons
a better episode.
Is the true finale of Enterprise, because it celebrates the crew and everybody gets a really good moment. So there's a lot, like we could have an episode about Star Trek Enterprise all by ourselves, but to celebrate the true 20th anniversary of Star Trek Enterprise, we knew we needed an expert. We needed boots on the ground to celebrate such a momentous 20th anniversary of a Star Trek show, So let's get to our special guest.
Our special guest is an actor who has appeared in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sons of Anarchy, Greyhound, and is one of the stars of Star Trek Enterprise, famous for his role as Lieutenant Malcolm Reed. Welcome, Dominic Keating.
Woo! Hey, guys. That's quite an introduction. I'd forgotten half those jobs.
Well, your IMDb had not.
I had to go Greyhound. What was that? Oh yeah, that's right. I was in Greyhound.
Is
with
it
Tom?
Every time you turn in your resume, you're like, oh yeah, I was in Buffy.
I have to say, it's a bit like that these days. It's getting to that age. Yeah, like, oh my word, yeah, I was. I've had people come up to me and go, I saw you, and I'm like, no, I wasn't in that. And then I check it and I go, oh my God, I was in that.
Well, let me ask.
I was rather good too.
That's always the perfect attitude to have for it. Well, Dominic, let me ask you this question that is completely unprepared. Ashley doesn't even know I'm going to ask you this question.
Oh, dear.
How do you feel as an actor now? We are 20 years past the premiere of Star Trek Enterprise, and I think most people recognize you as Lieutenant Malcolm Reed from Star Trek Enterprise. For an actor like yourself, is that something that you enjoy, or you're like, man, I really wish they would talk more about Desmond?
Desmond's, if we're going to be official.
My apologies.
Yeah, it was Desmond's joint. God bless. That was, that sitcom. That was my first big TV job in the UK. No, I embrace the Star Trek thing wholeheartedly. I have to say, it was a life-changing gig. And it has never stopped changing my life or maintaining the life that it changed. Let's put it like that. So I'm still in my house. Thank you, Trekkers. God knows, we just went back and did another convention in Vegas at the beginning of August after all this pandemic year. And they showed up, and God knows, I can't believe that I haven't signed everybody's baby 3 times over, but they still keep coming to my table, and bless them. And then I literally came home and I had a day and a half to unpack and repack, and I flew to Bordeaux to get on a riverboat cruise with some Star Trek fans, courtesy of cruisetrek.com. And we sailed the Garonne and the Dordogne rivers in the Bordeaux region, visiting chateaus and wineries, drinking some of the finest wines. And, you know, if I'd been on Lost, I wouldn't happen.
Jason loves Lost, so be careful.
There aren't many Lost cruises, I think, because they're so worried that
there's no lost cruises.
No Lost hike through the Hawaiian wilderness.
There should be, but there's not.
There really isn't. And, you know, I think of a couple of those actors that thought they'd hit the mother lode with that show. And in 4 years, it all went, you know, belly up, and that's it. So God bless, you know, it is, I pinch myself, literally. Not every day, but pretty regularly.
Well, Dominic, we have a segment on this podcast that I'm going to play a sound effect for, so please don't be scared. But I believe, sir, you are the first guest we have ever had on this podcast that has an action figure of themselves. And here, our segment here.
What took you so long?
We always have an action figure spotlight sometimes. I actually have your action figure. I found it the other day.
No kidding. I'm actually swiveling round on the chair in the office, and I'm staring at one in my bucket of action figures. I'm not kidding. I have a bucket of Star Trek memorabilia, as it were, from back in the day, and there it is. Yeah. Bless you for calling it an action figure. If you called it a doll, you would have owed me $1.
No, it's not cool to call them dolls anymore. Do you think they nailed your likeness?
I thought they did. I told them when we did they had a traveling doll machine thing that we
now you owe me $1.
Yeah, and I told them, just get the hair and the crutch right, guys, and I'll be a happy man. And I think we were pretty set on both counts. So there we go.
Well,
I was amazed actually just how, like, wow, that looks kind of like me. Well, it looks like me then. Yeah,
the Enterprise action figures do all look like you guys, and that is something that doesn't happen in a lot of other shows. Like
it was the new technology, I believe.
Yeah, the Lost action figures do not look like those
a
people.
lot of the earlier Trek action figures also did not heartily resemble their performers.
Very true.
I think this was the cutting edge at the time, 20 years ago, I guess. Yeah, and it was all done, you know, with sort of. It was kind of felt like mocap in a way or something like that. There was a lot of, you know, we were surrounded by cameras in a trailer that was a portable thing, and we had to sit there and, you know, it grafted us, as it were. And yeah, I was pretty impressed. Yeah.
Nice.
In the great tradition of Star Trek actors who came from the theater, I have a theater throwback question for you.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about originating the role of Cosmo in the Pitchfork Disney.
Oh, wow.
Because I did a very bad version of that play in uni. So when I saw this on your CV, I went and pulled my script out, and there you were in the original cast.
Are you going to read lines right now? Let's do this.
No, I'm not reading lines. Absolutely not. I am not going to throw myself under that bus. I just wanted to ask.
Did you play the sister?
I did, yes.
You did?
The
wow.
only woman in the show.
Yeah. What a piece that was. Well. That was Philip Ridley's, let me think this through. I think it was his first stage play. He'd done, I think, a radio play maybe. I think. Anyway, yeah. With Rupert Graves in what you would call maybe the lead, but it was a three-hander with Tilly Vosborough. My word. That goes back, and we were at the Shepherd's Bush at the, God, what's that theatre called upstairs? I think it's still there, the Bush Theatre, upstairs from a pub. Dominic Dromgoole ran that theatre at the time, and he's since went on to run the Globe in London, and he became a National Theatre RSC director and the whole 9 yards. How about that? That was a very exciting time, I have to say, and that play blew up in this little pub theatre. We had an extended run, and you couldn't get a ticket standing or otherwise to see it in the end. It was that was a life-changing event, and a lot of people came to see it, and that was the one that sort of kicked me right off into touch, as it were. And I never looked back after that. And playing Cosmo, what a part. I mean, it was mesmeric. You know, I had peroxide dyed blonde hair. Was that the first time? Yes, that's the first time I dyed my hair for a part was that. I did it again for Jungle to Jungle. They dyed my hair peroxide blonde. And
not with peroxide, surely.
Well, I went to some fancy hairdressers down in Beverly Hills to get the Jungle to Jungle one done. I'm pretty sure the however it was done in London was on the cheap. I remember this much. I had crater size scabs on my scalp for quite a while.
Oh, so maybe actually with peroxide then.
Yeah, it was pretty grim. I got pretty scorched earth scalp at the time. But yeah, it was that part was something else, and I adored every night. It was fantastic.
And now international students all around the world do it in theater school.
I tell you, you're not the first person that. There's a chap I know in London who's a theatre director and a big Star Trek fan, and he was, what's the word? I don't know, mightily impressed to meet me, blah, blah, blah. And then it came out in a conversation that I'd done this play, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. And he was, that was like, wow. I had, I'd played his Hamlet, if you will. And God bless. Yeah, the Pitchfork Disney. What a play. It was quite an extraordinary event. Yeah, and I tell you, the next play Philip did starred a very young and soon-to-be star Jude Law.
Wow.
At the Hampstead Theatre. Yeah, we followed one another in the Philip Ridley footsteps. Jude's career took off. Anyway, yeah. So, well. I mean, I've done a couple of firsts. It's a nice thing to have, there was another play called Amongst Barbarians, which I did in Manchester at the Royal Exchange, and then we got transferred to the Hampstead Theatre in Swiss Cottage. And that was another one that got a lot of attention. And it's lovely to be in the opening cover of a play, and first performed and created by blah blah blah. Yeah. I mean, I look back now and go, yeah, I had a career, didn't I?
I still think you do.
Says the man who worked with.
Well, I sort of do.
Says the man who's sitting by a bucket of his own action figures.
There you go. I'm very happy with how it all panned out. And look, the bell may ring again. I mean, I did a little job in the pandemic, a show called Phoenix, which was a lot of fun. I still audition. I have an agent in London that gets me out a little more than my guys here in LA. The playing field has completely changed, and and rightfully so. But I what parts that I might have gone up for now, they're not looking at a middle-aged white guy for. Let's put it like that.
Well, when can we look forward to seeing your Claudius? Is the real question.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I've got to get a few more grey hairs, but they're coming. I'm aging gracefully, and yeah.
Well, let's get this back to a little bit more Star Trek here, and let's
Nanu.
Yes, there you go. When you first got the audition for Star Trek Enterprise, one, did you know what part you were auditioning for, and two, was it clear from the get-go that this was a Star Trek show, or were they keeping that secret?
Oh no, they I knew the part, and I knew it was a Star Trek show. So I had auditioned for Rick Berman and Brannon Braga for Voyager about probably 18 months before for a guest star part. And it had gone so swimmingly well. I think we just got cell phones. I called my manager and said, yeah, we're doing Star Trek next week. And then I never heard from them again. And I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, really? Well, I mean, they were all in the room and you could just tell. I mean, an actor knows when you're like, I'm not that out of the park, and they were impressed. And that is, I could just tell it was, this is my gig. And as I say, not a tinkle. And I might have said to my manager at the time, I said, if those mofos ever call again, tell them to go sling a hook. So when he did call and said, listen, I just had Ron Surma on the phone from Star Trek casting. And, I think I have a part for Dominic Keating. And he had a very gruff, he was a big smoker, Ron, bless him. He had a really rough voice. I was like, okay, all right. Anyway, so I went in. I tell this story about, I wasn't raw by any stretch of the imaginations as an actor, but I'm a lot more experienced now, and actors love to act. And anyway, I went in there with a slightly more clipped voice than I might have, than my natural speaking voice, because he was a lieutenant, whatever, commander in Starfleet, and a little more plummy. Anyway, the word came back that they loved what I'd done, but could I make him more blue collar, which is where English and American breaks down. And again, with actors loving to act, I'd seen Ian McKellen, Sir Ian, play Iago at the RSC in Stratford. And he played Iago as a sort of like Yorkshire Northern councilman that would never aspire to be king, but would always do a thoroughly good job as second in command to his master. And I thought this was a wonderful idea for a group of Hollywood producers. So I went in there with a right bull, thick Bolton, Yorkshire, like, aye, Captain, right, Captain. And I think it was Mary Howard was the first one who leant forward and went, was that Scottish?
Not Scottish.
And Brannon leant forward and looked at her and reprimanded her with, "Oh my God, Mary, no, that was Welsh." And I was like,
that's your Brannon Braga impression?
That's my Brannon Braga
I've
impression.
never met the man. I am a big fan of his writing, and I've heard he's lovely. But I think it's awesome that you have a Brannon Braga impression.
Oh, I do a good Brannon. I do a Rick. I do a Brannon. Rick is a lot smoother.
And a lot.
I was waiting for a meeting. I was once waiting for a meeting with Rick about directing the show when it was still on the cards to do that. And his assistants told me that he was not feeling very well and he was going to be a little late. And would I mind waiting? We could get you a coffee, or you could go back to the trailer. And I said, no, I'll wait. So I waited, and 20, 30 minutes later, Rick comes into his front offices, and I stood up. And when he went, "Morning, Dominic," and I went, "Hi there, Rick." I said, "Now, you sure you want to take this meeting? I heard you were a little poorly." And he didn't miss a beat. He looked straight at that assistant and he went, "Oh, yeah? Where'd you hear that? On the radio?"
And that assistant never worked in Hollywood again.
Ouch!
That's burning that assistant. Ouch!
He honestly, Rick didn't take any prisoners. His wife once said to me at the wrap party, I think the first one, "Well, Rick Dominic, there's no control like total control."
Oh boy!
Wow.
Yeah. They're still married. Anyway, where were we? So, yes, Brannon looked at Mary and said, "That's Welsh, don't be ridiculous." And I could see this job skipping out the door. Like, "What were you thinking?" And I looked at Rick and I went, "Mr. Berman, do you think I could try it in my own voice?" And he went, "That'd be a good idea, Dominic." And I managed to pull my own voice proverbially out of my rear end, and that was pretty much that won the day. And I was the only person they took to network. I remember sitting there on the day. That's the day you sign, the contract, and you look at all those zeros. And then I got there. I was prepared for another half dozen. I'd done enough network auditions when you're down to the wire, and I don't know where they find them from, but there's going to be another 5 or 6 of you that kind of look and sound and feel a bit like you. And oh my God, he's more famous than you. He's better looking. He's taller. Get ready for that. And I sat there on that plush sofa, for a good 10, 15 minutes and no one kept them. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the only one. And as I thought that thought, I could hear this shuffle up the stairs. And I'm like, oh, here they come. And it was John Billingsley. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. If they think he can play Malcolm Reed, they don't know what they're looking for. Oh my God.
Little did you know you had gone in for Phlox.
John he signed his contract and he sat down next to me, and I was desperately trying to look over at the sides he had in his hand to see what. And I eventually said, are you here for Malcolm Reed? I said, are you here to audition for who? I said, Malcolm Reed. Are you here to audition for Malcolm Reed? Oh, no. I'm here for the Dr. Fox. I was like, okay. We're back in. And sure as SH1T, it was just me and John that day, and they'd only brought us in for those respective roles. And John went in first, and then I could halfway through the audition. I mean, bearing in mind at a network audition, if they don't like the way your eyebrows meet in the middle, you're not getting this gig. And halfway through I sort of had an ear to the door. It was a double doors too, and you could hear, and then I was like, are you kidding me? Did he squawk in an audition? And anyway, at the end of the audition, there was another. I was like, oh my word, this guy's ballsy. He came out, sat down, and I said, how'd it go in there? He goes, oh, yeah, it was pretty good. I said, oh, my ear bubbles just fell out. Sorry. I said, I couldn't help hearing, but did you squawk? He goes, I said, did you squawk in the audition? He went, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I said, why? He goes, well, I just figured that Dr. Phlox was a bird, and that the planet he came from, when he got excited, on account of being a bird, he would squawk. Now, he didn't get told. We did the read through and the table read. Scott was there, the whole 9 yards. They never said anything to him about this squawking. So I happened to be there on day one. Jim Conway directed our pilot episodes, and he didn't take any prisoners, man. I mean, he could be quite mean at times.
Okay, I have a question about the pilot, because Connor Trenier told us that during the pilot, he broke all the face pistol props.
He did. He broke them all.
I wanted to ask about like the mishaps or the mischief that you got up to and was working on the show from the beginning. Like, was it fun
Connor was
from
a clumsy
day one?
Bitch, let me tell you. And he was a clumsy bitch who didn't know his lines.
Throw him under that buzz.
Yeah, and then I had him round to work on Shuttlepod 1, and I went, you're going to be word perfect by the time we shoot this. You do realize that?
Okay. It's one of my favorite episodes, by the way. One of my favorite episodes, Shuttlepod 1.
Oh, bless. Yeah, it was a pretty good episode. Yeah, no, Connor, he within literally, I mean, I think within hours, he had broken, and those face pistols that they made were super expensive. They ended up using the ones from Toys R Us. I kid you not. I'm not joking. Those in all the episodes after that, they took out the noise thingy, whatever the little.
They were probably cheaper to accrue than to build the props.
And but those ones, they were thousands of dollars each. Those ones that props had made, and within, I think it was one particular day in one scene, Connor had broken his. And he looked at Scott and went, can I borrow yours? And Scott went, no fucking way. Anyway, so yeah. John squawked in that first scene in sickbay, and I kid you not, John, what's his name? The director. What's his, oh God, I've blanked on his name now.
Is it Conway?
He stood up, Jim Conway stood up from Video Village and just went, stop, cut. God. And he came around from Video Village onto the set of Sickbay, and he looked at John Billings. He went, are you shitting me? And it was like poor John's face I was like, well, I'm not married to it. I mean, you know. Anyway, the squawk went. But I tell this story because actors love to act. And it could have happened where Malcolm Reed went into sick bay with a thick northern accent. Oh, doctor, I'm not feeling right. And then doctor be like, quack, 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 quack.
Wow.
Yeah, it could have happened. I mean, it could have happened.
Well, Dominic, I think you might have just given the secret sauce because I think the show would have gone 10 seasons if that would have happened. I'm just saying. Nobody in the early 2000s, everybody wanted the chicken squawk.
There is, by the way, on Lower Decks, there is an avian humanoid character, so maybe John was onto something.
There is. So from all these stories, Dominic, it seems like was the tone of shooting on the Enterprise set, was it fun? Was it jokey? Was it a pretty? It doesn't seem to be a serious set.
It was a very, very fun, it's all down to Scott Bakula, bless him. He made those years joyous. You know, often Hollywood sets can be difficult places. You know, it's a lot of ego. And I have worked on some sets where you cannot wait to get in the car and drive home. And that was not the case at all. Every day was just fantastic going to work. And those long, tedious stays for the supporting cast on the bridge and, you know, long, difficult days for Scott, who had a lot of expositional lines to say and talking to a green screen. And and we joked around a lot. I mean, I can be a wisecracking ass. And he never once went, guys, not one time, not at one time. He was a mensch, he's one of the best. And did you see the Emmys on Sunday? Did you see that sketch? Mm-hmm. Did you see the sketch he did with Jason Alexander?
No, I did not.
And Zoe Deschanel. They had a sort of 12-step meeting circle for those who'd been nominated so many times for an Emmy and never won.
Oh, that's sad.
I know. It was like, well, yeah. Well, at least you got one foot in the circle, ladies. So anyway.
Well, it's the same thing. Like there are a lot of luminary actors in Trek that have just been around for a long time. It's like the same idea when you think about, I don't believe Patrick Stewart has ever been nominated for an Oscar. Mm-hmm. And you're like, how is that possible? Like,
yeah, God, you know, when you think about that, I mean, I guess it's just the film roles maybe haven't been quite so right. Mm-hmm. I mean, God bless. Yeah. Jason Alexander, mm-hmm. I was at an Emmy party during those Star Trek years, and I'm with my first fiance, and we were standing around, and we were huge fans of Seinfeld, and we'd been watching the reruns, and I am George, I have to say, and there he was, and I went,
second.
I went, Jill, look, there's Jason Alexander. And then out of nowhere, he starts waving furiously in our direction and marching over. And I'm not joking, I looked over my shoulder to see who he was waving at. And when I turned around, he was standing in front of me and went, Dominic Keating, oh my God, I am such a huge fan. I went, you're kidding, man. He goes, oh my God, I've been a Star Trek fan for years, my whole life. And I've been watching your show. You are fantastic. I'm like, oh my God, I can die and go to heaven now. I mean, that was it for me. And yeah, God bless, man. Yeah. Anyway,
so moving on. It's all good. That's great. It's funny. He actually is on Star Trek Voyager. He's like an alien. He probably took your part. So now but and I heard he got that role basically because he begged Rick and Brennan to be on the show.
Doesn't surprise me in the least. No, a monster fan. They're everywhere, I tell you.
So a question I want to ask you, you made a statement about the long days on the bridge. So I want to ask you, from Star Trek Enterprise, what was your favorite set to shoot on? And what was your least favorite set to shoot on? May I guess what I think your least favorite is?
Yeah, you have a guess, sure.
I'm going to guess anytime you did the shuttle pods.
Yes, they were pretty
They're pretty
hardcore. I cracked my head a couple of times in the shuttle pod. I mean, shooting shuttle pod 1 was it was, and they actually sawed one of them in half so that they could split it up and open it up and shoot like that. Yes, I mean, I'll grant you, the shuttle pods were challenging. You did crack your head on those bars quite a bit. They were very cramped. It wasn't so much the sets as that EV suit. That was the one that sunk me. Oh my God. I would, it was, they were hardcore. They really were. That's the mother of costumes. I mean, the helmet was 17, 18 pounds, supported only by your neck. Lord. And the backpack was like 50, 60 pounds. And the rubber was, proper NASA. I think you could have gone to space in that thing. I would lose, and I did a lot of hours in that thing. And by the second, third, fourth season, I would be reading these scripts, and you'd turn the page and it would just casually say, they step out in their EVs. Oh God. And I'd flick through to see how many pages I'd got in this damn thing. And I would lose. I didn't have much to lose either, but I would lose 3 to 5 pounds on a 3, 4, 5 day shooting schedule in that thing. Yeah, like that.
I'm trying to imagine the helmet, and I don't know how you didn't just pass away.
Jolene, God bless her, she could do, I'm not kidding, she could do half an hour in the suit.
Yeah.
That was about it. Yeah. And then in Minefield, I mean, if I'm going to toot my horn.
Do it.
That's when things changed. I had to pretend I was weightless in that suit, if you remember.
You're in that suit for the entire episode.
I wear it for the entire episode. I have to pretend that I'm like a cockroach pinned to the hull of that ship. My abs were rock solid after that episode. I mean, we're talking 12-pack. Scott, bless his heart, put his back out in that episode, and suddenly, everything changed. The personal trainer Mark came in, completely redesigned the whole suit. They got some sort of Anyway, it was all taken care of once Scott was like, I'm not doing this again, and it got a little easier, but not much. I have to say, it was more the suit, but. Otherwise, they were all very fun sets to work on. I mean, on the day trip, when people used to come and visit the set, I would, my favorite little thing to do was to take them into engineering, and you'd see that whole warp drive glowing and pulsing, and it was all, like, look at this. It was an edifice of a set. And then I'd go, follow me. And I take them around the back, and you'd have to sort of crunch up and get round to the back of that set. And there, between the brick wall of the studio wall itself and the back of the set, I'm not kidding, there was like a 1973 disco oil lamp. I'm not kidding, with a sort of kaleidoscope of colours going. And that was the warp drive. I'm not kidding. I kid you not. That was the warp drive, was this little... You could hear it.
Think about that every time now.
Every time you see it, all that big pulsing and the colours, it's a tennis club disco. It is. It's a tennis club disco oil lamp. Anyway.
This is why we stand with IATSE.
That's correct.
That's a topical reference for future listeners. But speaking of the listeners, a lot of the listeners might not know this, and I'm sure you've probably discussed this a million times, but what was the process of acting in an episode of Star Trek like? Was it different than other episodes of television that you'd done before?
Well, they were very particular about the words, which, I mean, I'm pretty sticklish about learning lines.
So you had to be word perfect, you mean?
Well, coming from the theater, yes. So.
Absolutely. There was one early on in the pilot, I had a fairly large, portion to say, and nailed it on first take. And I was like, yeah, that's great, that'll do. And then I heard them go, okay, back to one. They'll go again. I went, really? Was there a hair in the gate? And they, No. And the script supervisor came over and said, so Dominic, you said and instead of I've, you said but instead of if. He said, I'm like, you're kidding, right? She went, oh no, not on this show. And I was like, oh my God. Scott said to me, he said, Dominic, think of it like acting gymnasium. And I did. I embraced it in the end. And I was like, okay, you want perfect? I'll give you perfect. And I did. And I have to say, those years on that show, and then they would do rewrites, literally. I mean, you'd get them maybe minutes before going on set. And it was a workout. And I've never lost that skill, God bless. I can learn a 3-4 page scene in 20 minutes and be pretty perfect.
Wow.
And that's that show for me. Yeah, that did that for me. God bless.
So a follow-up to this is that sometimes talking to actors, I've discovered that there are lines from certain plays, certain productions that stick in their head forever just because, you had to say it for 100 takes or whatever. So my question to you is there a line of techno-babble gobbledygook that you still remember from Enterprise to this day?
No, there really isn't. Now, Marvin Rush, and I wish I'd remember this, our DP, who'd been the DP pretty much since the inception of the shows back with Next Gen, he might have been the DP from the absolute get-go. He had one down that was the absolute, the motherlode of techno babble, and I think it might have been on Voyager. I think
that wouldn't surprise me.
And I wished I'd remembered it because that would be a neat trick to go. Oh yeah, listen to this one. But no, I mean, I tell you one thing about that techno babble. If you broke it down, it always made sense. It literally did. It wasn't gobbledygook. It literally made sense. And that's how to learn it, that it had real sense behind it. And other than that, I used to stick it on my forehead so Connor could look at it. There was one time at 4 a.m. in the armory, and it was like getting super late, and he just couldn't get this line out. And I literally had them write it on a Post-it and stick it on my forehead.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Yeah.
Okay, so that episode is not going to qualify, but I have to ask, is there an episode that sticks out to you as being your favorite to film?
Well, Shuttlepod, yeah. Since we're going back, without a doubt. I mean, it was a little bit of a two-hander play, really, wasn't it? And we did well, and we got that script unusually 10 days before we went to shoot. And I had Connor come round to my little apartment over in Beechwood Canyon before I moved to the house that Trek built. And we rehearsed that episode for a good week before we went to shoot, which really made all the difference. And then they got obsessed with seeing our breath, and that became, so we shot 2/3 of that episode after we powered down the shuttle pod and they wanted to see the breath. They got upset. This was meant to be what they call the bottle show, where you just stick the bottle in the ship in the bottle.
It's where you save all the production
film
money.
It. Yeah. And suddenly they became obsessed with this breath thing, and they got like, they must have had half a dozen industrial air conditioning units in this on stage 9. They curtained off half of it. I mean, it was a nightmare. I mean, so in between takes, these aircon units would go rah, 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 rah. They had dry ice packed underneath and around the sides of that split open shuttle pod. They had Connor and I drinking hot herb tea so that our breaths would be warm. And then you get into position and shoot. And you get, 15, 20 seconds. And then you just hear, can't see the breath, cut. and we shot that 2/3 of that episode just like that. It was fairly hardcore, I have to say.
Just CGI the breath.
I was going to say, now they just they run it through Avid and you'd be fine.
I think back then it was expensive.
Oh, fair.
Apparently, yeah. And now, of course, that's commonplace. But yeah. And it became, that episode, particularly for Rick, became his baby. You know, I mean, they were just shooting Nemesis on the stage next door, and he never came to set, Rick, and he brought Sir Patrick round to see us shooting that episode.
Oh, no pressure.
Because he was because he was so proud of it, and it's the first time I met Mr. Patrick Stewart, and I think he was a sir then. I'm not sure. He might have been knighted after the fact, but yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, so yeah, that's probably my favourite. And then a couple of other. I think the best episode we shot was Cogenitor, but I wasn't in it much. But I did particularly think that was just a great piece of TV.
That is a really good episode.
Connor's terrific in it.
You also get your character also gets some really good stuff in season 4 when they open up the whole secret agent Section 31 business.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when you get some really good Malcolm. It's so interesting to me in the fandom because I find that Star Trek fans either love your character or either hate your character. And you know what? That's a compliment to you because I kind of feel that is the role.
A strong point of view either way.
That's the role Malcolm fits in your crew.
It's not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. I think it all depends.
I did a commercial campaign, 20...
Vidal Sassoon?
30 years ago for Vidal Sassoon. They had me in. I did this. It was a new product for spray-on gel initially, and the same. They did their AI testing. It's called, which is how people like you. And they came back to me and said, "So Dominic, you're a star because people either love you or hate you, but 78% of people love you. So and that's when they got me back in, and I did the whole Salon Formula commercial for their range of shampoos and conditioners, and that I call the flat in London wash and go out of respect."
So you need one. You need another big one.
I name all my properties after the jobs that buy them for me. Exactly.
So over the years, you've also been asked a lot of questions about Malcolm's love life, his sexual preferences. So I want to ask you. Do you think Malcolm Reed, the character, ever finds love? And also a follow-up, do you wish you had had like a true love story with that character on the show?
I wouldn't have minded. I mean, I had a brief altercation with Big Mole, she was known as, the Andorian chick.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct, yeah.
She recognized me on Runyon Canyon must be 4 years ago now, I'd say, under 5. I never walk Runyon. I don't know why I was there that day, but I was with someone who wanted to walk it, maybe an out-of-towner. And halfway up Runyon Canyon, this big chick came up and went, "You're Dominic." And I was like, "Yeah, I am." How old is he? And she said, "Well, we did an episode together." And I was like, "Oh, we did? Okay." Anyway, it was, I mean, look, forgive me. I mean, she was all blue, and I don't know that I ever saw her in her civvies. I mean, it would have been nice for Malcolm to get a bit more action on the show. I was really happy with there's no guarantees when you, particularly on a show like Star Trek, they have traditionally their triumvirate, which was the captain, the engineer, and the Vixen Vulcan on ours. And, the rest of it was open season. And, I managed to elbow out a pretty nice space in that show. Particularly, by season 3, the Xindi arc, Captain Archer was, proverbially messing up episode after episode. I didn't imagine to become the action man on that show, but I kind of did. And it was a lot of fun being that guy. And then often as not, quite good comic relief. And the writers were very nice to me, I have to say. And I made a decision early on that the 3-line bio that you read when you audition for something like this, which was for Malcolm, button down, stiff upper lipped Brit, shy around women, quite early on. I mean, I think even maybe by halfway through the pilot, if not the 3rd episode, I was like, I can't just play this guy in this box like this. This is going to be boring for me as much as for anyone else. And I just decided, let some of Dominic come through Malcolm. And then I did, and they liked it, and they started writing for this. And that's where his character became quite contradictory and human, if you will. And God bless. I mean, there are no guarantees, in these episodic shows about what you're going to get to do. And the writers are looking for something to write, give them something. And bless them, they saw what I was doing and latched on. And then being the English guy, I got the luxury of ringing them up and going, yeah, a British guy wouldn't say that. Oh, okay, Dom. What would he say? I'll get back to you on that. Okay.
I can't believe they didn't give you, well, this is the future. Maybe they say it now.
I can't believe you didn't follow it up, though. I'll take the story by credit. Thank you very much.
Yeah, truly. Where do you think Malcolm ends up after the finale of Enterprise? Archer very famously becomes the president of the Federation. So where did you see Malcolm going? Full spy?
Back to Riser. What was the name of that planet? Back to Riser. Yeah. Who knows, love? I never know what to answer with those hypotheticals about, where would you like to have? I have no idea.
Trying to get you your story by credit.
It would have been, there was a lot, God knows. It was a shame, wasn't it? Manny's taking of the reins was brilliantly done. And no disrespect to Brannon. I mean, he'd run that show for 15 years, maybe 16 years. And that's an incredibly unprecedented run on network TV. I mean, it's unheard of. It'll never be done again. And, was he burned out? Yeah, a little bit. Was Manny, I remember Manny's first script in the Zindi when he came on as a staff writer. I was like, that's good. I rang the writer's office and went, well, I speak to this Manny Koto. He wouldn't take that call now. And he was quite delighted to hear from a cast member how great his script was. And what a great job he did. I'm not that familiar with the lore of Star Trek, but apparently there were some horribly loose ends in our 3 seasons prior to his taking of the reins, which apparently he, did up with a great big bow and a flourish. And it's a shame because we had at least another couple of seasons in us, and we were really finding our legs by the end of season 4. And yeah, it's a crying shame that politics, network politics was our demise more than anything else, I think. So yeah, but as apropos Malcolm. Who knows? I mean, that Section 31 stuff could have been more explored.
What do you think? You've been talking to fans for 20 years. It's amazing that fans are still talking about Star Trek Enterprise for 30 years or 20 years, excuse me. And actually, fun fact, I heard this from a lot of people. A lot of people that had not seen Star Trek Enterprise watched it in the pandemic. And so it's sort of enjoying, I've seen lately in the fandom, an upswing where people have been like, oh, why did I not watch this show? So 20 years on, talking to all these fans, and from your perspective, what do you think is the legacy of Star Trek Enterprise, and how proud of the show are you 20 years on?
I'm very proud of the show. I think we were, like I say, I mean, we thought we were going to really carry the mantle, and we thought we were going to do the 7 years, and frankly, we thought we were going to get the movies. Where Voyager had not. It all looked good. We had what you would consider a bona fide star in the lead part. We were, dare I say it, and myself accepted, we were the best looking Star Trek cast.
How dare you accept yourself for that? I will not stand for such a statement.
Well, I don't want to sound too, gorgeous. But we were a pretty good-looking cast, and pretty accomplished.
I would have killed for a Star Trek Enterprise movie. That now it's so funny. I'd never thought about that before, but now that you say that, I'm like, was Scott back in the lead? How did they not at least give you guys one movie?
We definitely thought. Well, because the numbers weren't there. That's I think it was just horrible timing, really, wasn't it? They had been to the well. it's amazing when you see the threshold now of where we're at with these Goliath shows. They can't get Star Wars movies out quick enough anymore. And it doesn't really matter. They don't really care how they perform particularly. I mean, I guess they care a bit, but it's the same with Star Trek shows. I mean, they just, you know, they'll never not be another Star Trek show. Trust me now. They've harnessed the horse, and they've got the horse by the reins, and they know where to steer it. Back when we were airing, it was still network TV, and you went out on a Friday night or you didn't. And we got bumped for Friday night football in Texas. We got bumped for, I mean, you name it. It was a different arena, entirely different arena. Now, if you're a fan of whatever you want to be a fan of, you can find it somewhere, and it's not going to cost those producers an arm and a leg to make it and put it up there. And that's different. And that wasn't the case in our day. Our shows cost $3 to $4, $5 million, depending on how much CGI they put in it. And they were mini films, and they had to, you know, you had to get the advertising behind it, or you didn't swim. I mean, when it looked like we might get cancelled, there was all sorts of talk about going maybe to Vancouver to shoot it and do it cheaper and blah, blah, blah. Scott wouldn't have done that. He had 2 small kids, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm just thinking it all through. It's a different landscape now. And I've lost the train of what the question was, really. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we didn't get that chance to do those movies, because we were a natural choice, I would have said. I would have said so, yeah.
Well, Dominic, I just want to, first off, congratulate you and the rest of the cast and the rest of the crew for 20 years anniversary.
20 years.
We're still talking about Star Trek Enterprise.
Can't wait to have you back for the 30th anniversary.
Yep, have you back for the 30th.
Yeah.
And the 40th and the 50th.
And there's enough Star Trek shows out there that I hope your entire cast gets to appear on some Star Trek show in the future.
Bless you. You reminded me of a story when I did my first convention. I was early on the first conventions. I'd done half a dozen, and I was the first out of the gate for our cast, and the others were all a bit sniffy about it. Like, oh my God, you got to do those things. When I drove my brand new Porsche 11 onto the block, like, okay. But I was telling the story about getting the story about getting the job with Mary Howard and the Yorkshire accent. And I was like, I stopped myself halfway through, and I'm rather for sort of theatrical effect, really. I said, oh my word, it's so strange telling this story, 7 months after the event, blah, blah, blah. And this lady at the back screamed out, try saying that in 35 years, honey. I was like, woof. Never forgot her.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So please, God, let's hope there are 35 years. And yeah, it's wonderful that you have me on. I'm chuffed. Because I have to say, we've been the ginger-headed stepchild of the anniversary events. And we have been utterly overlooked yet again. Voyager get an anniversary union something every 3 years. I don't know what it is.
You didn't have enough drama on your cast. You don't have people who don't want to sit next to each other on the couch.
Basically what it is. That's basically what it is.
Is that what that is?
It's a lot.
That was a huge deal with Voyager specifically for a long time.
Because the 2 shows that preceded you, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, both had casts that a lot of the people didn't enjoy working with each other.
No, I mean, that's what I was referring to about other Hollywood sets I've worked on. They could be miserable places. And I thank God. I mean, the fact that we only did 4 years and 98 episodes, at least each day,
only 98 episodes,
was joyous. I mean, it was joyous. I mean, and I have heard the horror stories about. I just can't imagine having to go and do a 16-hour day with someone that walks onto set and suddenly all the air is sucked out of the room.
Yeah,
it's pretty miserable.
The very famous story I've heard, and this might be a good ender, is the another Trek alumnus, Armin Shimmerman, tells the story. I've heard him say this at convention several times, where he said, he's like, on the Voyager set, he's like, your captain was Kathy. On our set, it was, hello, Mr. Brooks.
Right.
And I think that tells you everything you need to know about that set.
Right. There you go. Yeah.
Well, Dominic, this was an absolute pleasure. Happy 20th anniversary. I'm so glad that Trek built you a house. Please.
Thank you, guys.
Please tell our listeners where they can find you online. And do you have any upcoming projects in store that we can look forward to seeing you in?
I've got this show Phoenix, which I think is on Netflix. It's a sort of cyber thriller thing. I play a rather dubious, nasty character. What was his name? Billy Blue, who is a sex trafficking. He's not a very nice. He's a fun character, but not very nice, with a very feisty temper. It's called Phoenix. That's as much as I know and remember. We shot it before we were vaccinated. I was a little nervous, but you know what? It went off with absolutely no issue. No one got the dreaded COVID. I've done a couple of voices for Blizzard for World of Warcraft recently. And that's about it at the moment that I can think through. I've been surfing a lot and golfing a bit. And frankly, I mean, I reached the ripe old age a month and a half, 2 months ago, whatever. And
he's 25, folks.
I'd say exactly.
Well,
I did tell someone recently. But I'm sure that something will pop up. I mean, I think, I always remember Jeremy Conway, who nearly took me on as my first agent in London, who he was engineering Helena Bonham Carter's Meteoric Rise along with Ken Branagh at the time. But he took a meeting with me and he said to me, Dominic, there's one thing you've got to understand about being an actor. There's always going to be a period of your career when you're just not offered any work. And it's for those that can suffer that and work out that war of attrition there. They're the ones that survive. And I think I'm just in a little period like that right now. So I think the bell will ring again. And the talent's still there. And ultimately, it just takes one audition. And I bet you any money it'll be a Star Trek fan, producer, director who just goes, yep, he's fantastic. We want him in this. And it may ring again. So we'll see.
I think it definitely will. And I think all you need is a bucket full of your own action figures to prove it. Just shove it through the door. Shove it through the door. You got the job. Well, Dominic, thank you so much for joining us in Geek History Lesson, sir.
My pleasure, guys. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much.
Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed our conversation with the amazing Dominic Keating and his perspective on Star Trek Enterprise. If you want to hear more with Dominic, we had an extra conversation with Dominic Keating about his career, about some of the other movies and projects he has acted in. And you can hear that bonus podcast over at patreon.com/Jawiin. That's Jawiin, with some of the extra podcasts we do over there, including our Justice League podcast and Jason and Ashley's Excellent Adventures. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek History Lesson. You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple. The list is endless. Thank you so much for listening. Class is now dismissed.